Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through the noise, get straight to the insights. Our whole modern world relies so heavily on this invisible net of satellites, doesn't it? Guiding cars, connecting calls, even helping farmers know when to plant. But imagine if that network just went silent. Not quietly, but through absolute chaos. That's the scenario we're diving into today, our mission. Unpacking the key insights from Dax Hammond's book, The Kessler Cascade, Reshaping Humanity's Orbital Future.
We're looking at how one single event back in 2028 completely changed our relationship with space and tech forever.
Yeah, and what's really striking reading through this is that it wasn't just some freak accident, It really feels like a culmination. Warnings that were ignored for years, plus these significant political shifts happening at the time. They kind of set the stage perfectly for this disaster.
Yeah.
It makes you ask, how did we let it get to that point?
That's the core question, isn't it? Okay, so the book zeroes in on March 12th, 2028. Walk us through it. What actually happened up there? Right. So you've got two old satellites in low Earth orbit LEO, that really busy area just above us, and they collide. Bam. Hammond describes it really vividly, like high-speed fragments spread like sparks from a bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
Each piece just shooting off, becoming its own projectile. It wasn't minor, it was the trigger.
And this idea of debris causing more debris.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds familiar. The Kessler syndrome, right? Was this something people thought coming?
Oh, absolutely. For decades. Experts like NASA's Donald J. Kessler, they've been warning about this exact thing, the Kessler syndrome. Basically, LEO gets too crowded, one collision happens, and the debris causes more collisions, then more debris. It's a chain reaction. And the insight from Hammond's work is how those warnings were just sidelined, pushed aside in the big rush to connect everything everywhere right now.
So the drive for connectivity sort of overshadowed the risk.
Exactly. It seems immediate expansion was prioritized over, long-term orbital safety.
But it wasn't just the physical collision. The book mentions a related twist of fate down here on Earth. How did politics play into this?
This is such a critical piece and maybe overlooked. Around 2025, the book points to this new style of political maneuvering. It caused real disarray, widespread disruption within key federal agencies. And these were the agencies responsible for meticulously tracking all that stuff in orbit.
So the tracking just fell apart.
Their capacity was decimated, yeah. The exact locations of countless satellites just got lost in the noise, became obscure. Private companies tried to step in, sure, and they had some pretty good tech, but their systems were patchy. They couldn't replace that lost centralized oversight. Not fully, so it basically created this vulnerability. Once the cascade started, there was no real way to prevent the spread.
Wow. So Earth-based problems directly fueling a space disaster.
Precisely. It's a stark lesson in how interconnected it all is. Governance down here impacts everything up there.
Okay, so the stage is set, the collision happens. What did that mean for everyday life? How fast did the impact hit us?
Almost immediately. Within days, the effects were widespread. Think about autonomous vehicles suddenly losing GPS, getting lost in cities. Chaos. Farmers, right. They'd become so reliant on satellite data for precise planting, weather, suddenly flying blind, uncertain harvests.
And city infrastructure.
Digital billboards blanking out, emergency communication systems flickering off. Millions of people just found themselves cut off. A really profound, unexpected disconnection.
That's hard to even picture now. How did people react to being suddenly offline, essentially?
Well, it was this almost shocking return to older tech. People actually started tuning into radios again, picking up landline phones, if they still had them, rediscovering ways to connect that felt almost ancient.
It really highlights a fragility we didn't realize we had, doesn't it?
It does. The reliance on this one super complex network left us surprisingly vulnerable. It was a crash course in resilience. Like it or not.
But the book also talks about human ingenuity shining through, right? Some inspiring stories.
Oh, definitely. Amidst the chaos, you saw amazing resourcefulness. Like farmers in northern Argentina, with their tech gone, they started using traditional techniques again. Reading the land, the sky, stuff passed down for generations. And in Uganda, engineers got creative, launched helium balloons to create makeshift temporary communication networks, basically building an aerial internet on the fly.
That's incredible. So what's the takeaway there about us and our tech?
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? Technology can fail. It will fail sometimes. But human ingenuity, our ability to adapt and collaborate, that's incredibly resilient. We find ways to bridge the gaps. Our real strength isn't just in the machines.
Okay, let's talk about SpaceX. You can't discuss orbital congestion, especially back then, without bringing them up. The book says they came under fire.
Yeah, big time. They'd been pioneers, obviously, but critics pointed fingers, saying their huge Starlink network was a major factor in pushing LEO over the edge, congestion-wise.
So how do they respond, especially Elon Musk?
Well, true to form, it was a bold, almost desperate move. Musk announced Operation Clear Skies. The idea was pretty radical, launching a fleet of what Hammond calls orbital janitors. Small, agile satellites designed not for communication, but for cleanup.
Cleanup? How?
They were equipped with nets, robotic arms, even lasers, apparently, designed specifically to capture or deorbit dangerous debris safely. And by mid-2029, the book notes, there were early signs it was actually starting to work, starting to make a dent in the debris field.
So the pioneers had to become the cleanup crew, in a way.
Essentially, yeah. It showed a shift, right, from just rapid expansion to needing active orbital management. They had to become part of the solution.
This whole crisis, it must have forced a global reckoning. How did it lead to international collaboration? That often seems so difficult.
It really did. The public pressure was immense. Leaders, scientists, policymakers worldwide, they basically had no choice but to come together. That old Wild West mentality about space, where anyone could just launch whatever, that was shattered completely.
And the result was the 2030 Orbital Charter. What was that all about? What did it change?
It was a landmark agreement, a comprehensive set of rules, basically. Things like much stricter guidelines for responsible satellite launches, clear plans for deorbiting old satellites, and importantly, shared accountability, both in nations and private companies.
So a new rule book for space.
More than just rules, though. The core idea the Inside Hammond brings out was a fundamental shift in philosophy, moving away from space as a limitless frontier to seeing as a finite environment that needs stewardship. Collective responsibility. Real progress now meant humility, collaboration, not just relentless expansion.
That is a huge shift. Back on Earth, the economic fallout must have been massive, too. What happened to industries that depended on satellites?
Oh, the shockwaves were immense. Global shipping, finance, logistics, industries built around satellite tech were suddenly scrambling. Supply chains just buckled. The economic pain went way deeper than I think anyone initially predicted. It showed how embedded that tech truly was.
And societally? Did it change how people lived or saw the world? Beyond just the initial scramble.
Yeah, some fascinating things happen in big cities with less light pollution maybe and less digital distraction. People started noticing the night sky again. There was this weird nostalgia almost. Photographers, artists capturing these clearer skies. But then you had places like parts of Kenya mentioned in the book where modern tech hadn't fully penetrated life anyway.
So they adapted more easily.
Remarkably easily, yeah. Schools started teaching celestial navigation alongside science, bridging old knowledge with the new reality. It really made people question if our definition of progress had become too narrow, too focused just on digital connectivity.
Which brings up that fundamental question the crisis posed, didn't it? Had our obsession with being connected blinded us to the risks? Was progress worth potentially losing touch with the physical world?
Absolutely. And, stepping back, this kind of vulnerability isn't entirely new, is it? People started talking about historical parallels, like the 1859 Carrington event, that massive solar storm that knocked out telegraphs, or even the 77 New York blackout. It just showed that every technological era has its weak points. Ours just happened to be orbiting overhead.
We tend to forget the lessons of the past sometimes.
We do, especially when we're dazzled by new technology. We rediscover vulnerabilities the hard way.
So the Kessler Cascade became this massive wake-up call, as Hammond puts it. How did it reshape our thinking about innovation and resilience moving forward?
It really forced a deep reckoning. How do we innovate responsibly? How do we balance that drive with genuine restraint? And, crucially, how do we build systems that aren't just resilient on paper, but can actually withstand shocks, survive the unexpected?
Did satellite technology itself change?
Dramatically. Engineers went back to the drawing board. Designing satellites with built-in self-deorbiting features became standard, using materials that would burn up more easily on re-entry. Plus, you saw this boom in startups focused purely on orbital debris management. New ideas, new solutions coming from all over. The big lesson was crystal clear. LEO is finite. You have to treat it with respect.
Looking back through the lens of the book, it really paints the crisis as this dual thing, a tragedy, absolutely, but also a critical turning point. It exposed how fragile our modern world had become, stripped away digital comforts. But in doing that, it created this space, this opportunity to rethink everything, not just tech, but our whole approach to progress.
Exactly. And by 2030, according to Hammond, while the scars were there, the lessons had sunk in. This understanding that every step forward in space, whether it's satellites or stations or whatever comes next, carries responsibility to the planet, to each other, sustainability, collaboration, even humility. These became the watchwords. Not just speed and scale anymore, it became about balance, foresight, and, importantly, having the courage to change course when you realize you need to.
So today, when we look up, hopefully we see not just stars, but a reminder. A reminder of fragility, yes, but also resilience. And maybe every new satellite, every new regulation holds a quiet promise, a commitment not to repeat those mistakes, to temper our exploration with respect, which leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? Given this huge reassessment in space, you have to wonder, what other areas of our relentless innovation could really use a similar wake-up call? Where else might we need to critically rethink the balance between risk and long-term sustainability?